Big Ten Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network.
What is going on? Glad to have you with us. I'm Dalton Shetler, and if you don't know what's going on, Sam Sprunger over there, allergy season, all the different things going on.
It's a cold. I'm telling you, it's a cold. I hate having a cold.
Yeah, it is one of the most annoying inconveniences that can be put on.
Well, and I never thought I'd be so happy to have Kleenexes or tissues that have lotion in them. It's unbelievable. Oh, for sure. It saves my little nose from getting all red.
Oh, shoot. So, of course, this is Big Ten Plus 4. We're college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. A lot of different things to get into this week.
Yeah.
We had the NFL draft take place. The Big Ten had its fingerprints all over that NFL draft. We'll talk a little Big Ten spring as all the spring games wrapped up this past week with Maryland and Minnesota finishing up their spring games.
Minnesota.
That's right. Big Ten postseason for spring is coming. Golf, softball, baseball still got a little bit more to go in the regular season, but there's a lot taking place. And besides all that stuff, you have a lot of the stories of in the courtroom or trying to get into the courtroom and a lot of different things happening with NIL. So there's a lot to get to here today. We'll start off with the NFL draft, Sam, because the Big Ten ends up with 7 players selected in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I thought so too. And honestly, caught back up with a guest from our show, Dustin Schutte, who was on just a couple weeks ago. He thought maybe there could have been more. He thought 8 could have comfortably made the first round, but ultimately he thought it was a good showcase for the Big Ten.
Well, you think that's a little over 20% of the round is from the Big Ten, know, and that's pretty impressive for a conference. I mean, they weren't all from Michigan and all from Ohio State, so there were some schools, from this conference that is supposedly not a great football conference, producing a lot of first round talent.
And you talk about the different schools. You had Michigan, you had Ohio State, you had Penn State, and then of course your Purdue Boilermakers make it, as we were expecting with George Karlaftis. So what do you think about that? Arizona, right? That's where he landed.
Yeah.
Or no, Kansas City.
I was going to say he ended up in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm excited for him. I'm glad he's getting the opportunity. He's a first-round draft pick. I mean, that's a big statement for somebody that was at the beginning of the season last year not looked to be much more than a third-round draft pick. And that just, kind of lends to the fact that he busts his butt and gets results. And I think Kansas City got a heck of a linebacker from it.
And by the way, if you're following on the visual medium, I'm going to tilt my camera down a little bit. I was trying to show Paul Bunyan, showcase him a little bit, but that's the pride of the Shetler basement. But outside of that, the Big Ten ultimately gets 48 players selected overall throughout the entire NFL draft. And what was interesting to me too, I see you kind of already collected a thought. What's on your mind?
That's like only 3 times more than the University of Georgia.
Right. Yeah. Georgia's entire defense was early in the draft. That's ridiculous. But what was interesting to me too, talking about the Big Ten and really with just the NFL in general, how many wide receivers went early for the Big Ten? I mean, in the first half of the first round, you had Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and Jahan Dotson come off the board. And it goes to show, and then, of course, Kenneth Walker III, maybe the best running back in the draft, doesn't go until the second round. I mean, you notice that football is really treating running backs in the NFL like kind of just a cog in the machine lately, where it's like, hey, maybe we can get 2 or 3 years out of you, and then we already know we're kind of spent, you got to go. But receivers, we can do some different things with. And we saw in San Francisco last year where Deebo Samuel was used in the backfield. So everybody's looking at receivers now as these hot
you've got
commodities.
Cordero Patterson does it too. He's
Yep.
a receiver, but he is featured in the backfield as well.
But it's interesting though how wide receivers are stealing kind of the spotlight in all this, because those were just the three Big Ten receivers that were selected in the first 16 picks. There were other receivers to go as well, but between receivers and defensive ends, I mean that was your first round of the NFL draft.
Well, and it was surprising that quarterbacks fell as far as they did. I'm not in the debate. I got in this chat yesterday, or a talk yesterday, that prognosticators have to pigeonhole somebody to be the great from the draft class, and it's okay not to have a great. There's only 32 starters in all of NFL football. There doesn't need to be a great every draft.
Yep.
And whether a team thinks they're going to be great is one thing, but don't try to pigeonhole somebody and bully some of these teams who need a quarterback into taking a quarterback too early if they don't need to. It's sad that there are teams wasting picks, and not that they did in the first round this year. I mean, it was only Pickett that was taken in the first round this year, and a lot of people think that was stretch. But it is what it is. It's what a team values that player as, not anybody else. But prognosticators, stop trying to make somebody, well, he's the great, he's the best of the draft class. That's okay if he's just serviceable, and it brings up, I guess you got to have the drama, maybe. I don't know.
Well, and that's especially with the NFL draft being the beast that it's become with TV and everything else. Yeah,
oh, goodness. It's a production. Can you imagine how much money is dropped putting that together?
No, I can't. I haven't ever seen a report, so I really have no idea. But no, it would be hard to imagine. But I do love too, since you brought up Kenny Pickett, the ridiculousness. This is one of the things, because I'm not a huge NFL fan. I find myself,
I enjoy it, but I'm not a huge fan of it.
Yeah, I find myself more or less just rooting on and finding alums of the team that I root for.
I'm going to buy my first Browns jersey ever because David Bell went.
David Bell, that's right. I was trying to think of the connection.
And they got a steal. I'm just going to go. I'm going to go on the record saying they got a steal. And I've talked to a few friends that are Browns fans around here, and I've told them, I said, next 3 to 5 years, he's going to be one of the best receivers in the game. You hope that you still have him.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue it, especially we saw how special Rondale Moore was, and that translated to the NFL. He was great with Arizona last year. If David Bell can find a way to parlay it as well, I mean, he was amazing. I mean, he was getting double covered every single game and still finding a way to be one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. So I'm with
he
you
had
here.
the George Karlaftis effect. He didn't have much supporting him, surrounding him on the offense, and yet he still put up the numbers that he did. He might not have been numbers wise one of the best receivers in the conference, but good Lord,
but he was too. That's the crazy thing.
Correct. What I'm saying is he still was, and he didn't have the support that let's say the guys from Ohio State did. They didn't have each other. He didn't have a second to go with him. That's not taking anything away from the receivers Purdue does have, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and I mean, to that point, I like watching Jackson Anther play. I think he's a fine player, but it's not the same. It's kind of like Odell Beckham Jr. when he was with New York and the Giants, and he just was seeing double the triple coverages every game, and he's like, oh my God, I just want to be open.
Right.
I mean, that's what Bell was kind of going through. But yeah, so overall, thought the Big Ten came out pretty nice. There's a couple of first rounders we haven't highlighted so far. Well, matter of fact, we haven't really gotten into the number 2 pick, Aiden Hutchinson. He gets to stay home in Michigan, goes to the Detroit Lions. But you know what? I think he carries that
culture.
Right.
Hopefully, because we've talked about this a little bit on here, is I think Detroit has got a problem with their culture. Matthew Stafford puts up great numbers for a Lion, does nothing.
Yep.
Goes to LA his first year, doesn't do as well numbers wise, but wins a Super Bowl. Jared Goff, who took the Rams to a Super Bowl, doesn't matter if it was defensive, led or not. He was the quarterback for a Super Bowl team. Goes to Detroit, can't do anything. It's a culture thing. And I hope Aiden Hutchinson is able to change it.
And, I do think maybe it's already started in the past year. Dan Campbell coming to Detroit as the head coach. I mean, he brings something that, and he kind of embodies what all Motown is about, right? Like, we're blue collar, blue blood. I mean, that guy, when you listen to him talk, he's as blue collar as it gets, where he had the quote where you're gonna hit us down. We're gonna try biting your kneecaps off on the way down to the ground. Like, that guy, he just gets it. So I think
your Achilles when we hit the floor.
Yeah. But
have you ever seen well, how do I say this? They were by far the best 0-9 team or 0-8 team, whatever it was, before they got their first win. Best team I've ever seen at 0-8. They didn't seem like they were ever out of it, even though they just kept losing. I mean, losing on a record-breaking field goal at the buzzer, at the gun.
It's the most Lions thing ever.
Yeah, absolutely. But you didn't see them hanging their head and go, wee, wee, wee. They had changed a little bit. So I'm hoping that a combination of Dan Campbell and Hutch and some of these new pieces that they're bringing in. I'm not a Lions fan, but good Lord, I've got friends that are Lions fans, and I worry about them every year.
You can't not feel pity for Lions fans, but and to your point,
that's coming from a Bears fan. Good Lord.
to kind of close the loop on it, I know it's not Big Ten related, but since we're here with the Detroit Lions, they get Jamison Williams in the first round too, receiver from Alabama. I mean, this is potentially a transcendent draft in the franchise of the Detroit Lions. I mean, now look, they've gotten it right before. They had Calvin Johnson, and Calvin Johnson went into retirement because he said, "I've had enough."
They didn't get it right. They picked right.
I was going to say, so ultimately, who knows how this all shakes out? But the Lions swung for the fence with this draft, and we'll see how it plays out. That's maybe the best way to put it.
Let's not forget, after Calvin Johnson, they had arguably one of the best running backs ever to put on football pads that retired early as well, Barry Sanders.
Hey, how refreshing is it? Again, I know neither of us are Lions fans, but he's back around the franchise. He was doing stuff for the NFL draft.
He announced a pick, at least one that I did see. So at least he's been able to bury the hatchet somewhat. I'm sure they're still deep seated, just like, I can't believe you did this to me.
Yeah,
and rightfully so.
Yep, 100%.
I don't damn him for a bit.
Nope, I think you're spot on. So Big Ten spring games wrap up. Wanted to take a look. I know now we're finally in the off season.
Finally in the off season. Well, actually, isn't the spring game kind of the kickoff for the the football season? But
right,
yeah, I get you.
We'll have 2 months here where we're not seeing football games. How's that? But nonetheless, it was interesting because friend of the show now, Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition, wrote up a piece where he recapped all 14 of the spring games and you say games kind of with quotation marks, because I mean, some teams didn't necessarily. Yeah. Like Michigan State was one that didn't really do a full on game because they only had 7 offensive linemen. Like,
yeah, you can't do that.
It's going to be pretty hard with that.
Just run a 7-on-7.
Yeah. And so it kind of became some of that stuff. But Dustin broke down, he had 3 teams that really popped off the page that impressed him. Ohio State being one. Michigan impressed him. He thought with a lot of the pieces, and I think he's spot on here. You look at Michigan, you lose Aiden Hutchinson. They're on the defensive line. You lose David Ojabo on the defensive line. You lose Daxon Hill in that secondary. Josh Ross, a linebacker. That defense is going through a cleanse. And then, of course, offensively, you get a new offensive coordinator in. You lose Haskins. Like, there's a lot of pieces gone on this Michigan team. What do you expect? He was pretty impressed with what he saw from the spring game. So maybe Michigan, I don't know that they can necessarily go back to back, but maybe they're in the hunt at least again, which when you look at all the departed, all the attrition, that's kind of a big thing to say.
we haven't seen a season where they've had to rebound to see if they're able to repeat, because this is the first time in the Harbaugh era they've done anything. So it's one of those that, yeah, I could be impressed by it, but at the same time, you're going to have to see what happens on Saturdays too, because you're not sure what those replacements are going to do against Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, those teams that are going to be traditionally stacked and ready to roll.
Yeah, so it will be interesting. I mean, I think you're spot on, and yeah, any Jim Harbaugh digs, go ahead, Sam. I will never interrupt you if you want to keep flying those through.
He's a former Bear, so I can't completely hate him.
Fair enough. He's earned a little bit with you, just from where.
Of course, I've had him out the door 2 times in 3 years leaving Michigan.
Well, he himself was halfway out the door this year.
Well, this was one of those. The next one is. I just now think it's whenever there's a job that is going to take him. It's not. I don't think he sees a perfect storm where he only leaves for this NFL team. I think anybody that flirts with him and says, "Hey, you want to come interview with us?" He's going to jump on the plane and be there. He showed that with Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the remnants really of that whole thing show that he's interested. He wants back in the NFL.
He wasn't moving to Ann Arbor to make it a career change. It's a stop. It's a stop for him. I think he wants to win a Super Bowl, and whether or not that happens, I don't know. But I think he wants to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. So, do you also want
brother to blame that he doesn't have one?
You're not wrong. Not wrong. Do you want to bring up the other team that Shooty was pretty impressed with? We talked about this a little bit with him, but he was impressed with the Minnesota Golden Gophers, and this was interesting to me. Yeah. Okay. So why?
Well, the running back,
Mo Ibrahim.
He is a great running back, and the fact that he's back just puts Minnesota at that level to where you could see them doing some things, making it to Indy, upsetting the East. I mean, when you've got a back that is, look at Saquon Barkley when he was at Penn State. He could run over people. That's what this guy is. Not maybe the exact cookie cutter thing, but he is just a huge back, that not in size but in just talent.
Well, he hung 200 yards on Ohio State before he got hurt and tore his ACL or whatever the injury was in that first game of the season, which was just heartbreaking.
Right.
But no, you're right. He's great.
And that's on Ohio State, who is known for a defense.
Well, used to be. Last year was another story.
Anomaly last year. Yeah. Normally they are.
But that's what, when Dustin brought up Ohio State, a big part of the reason why was because the new defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, coming from Oklahoma. Maybe that
Oklahoma
completely.
State or Oklahoma?
I believe just Oklahoma, but let me double check in case I'm misspeaking.
You might be right. I thought he went from OSU to OSU. That's why I made that connection.
Oh, no, you are correct. Oklahoma State.
Yes.
So look at you.
Yeah.
It's already a good day for Sam.
It's only because of the stupid comparison of OSU to OSU. It has nothing to do with I know anything. It's just that was it.
But he comes in and maybe things get restructured there on the defensive end. And at least if you're trying to buy into the Buckeyes, you're an Ohio State fan, that's the belief you're carrying with you, is that the defense changes with Knowles coming in. Ohio State clearly still has the most talent in the conference. I don't really think that's up for debate. If they can shore up that back end is really the whole conversation, because offensively they're going to slaughter people through the air.
Yeah. It's unfair.
Yeah, no, it is.
And I'm not complaining, but it's just, I'm laughing at the fact that it's just totally just unfair to the rest of the Big Ten.
So if we play this game where here May 6th, 2022, who's playing in the 2022 Big Ten championship game 7 months from now? Sam, who do you like?
Oh, are we being serious? Because I could just say Purdue and IU, and there you go. It's not going to happen, obviously.
They play back-to-back weeks. They finish the regular season and play in the Big Ten title game.
And if that were to happen, would they play for the bucket both times?
That's a great question. They should. That's a great question. I love this idea.
They absolutely should. The first week, whoever wins gets the bucket, and then the next week, if the other team wins, they storm the field and hoist the bucket and the Big Ten trophy.
I'm trying to think. I don't think there's been a rivalry trophy game for a Big Ten championship to this point.
Is there any rivalry in, excuse me, the Big Ten where the rivals are in opposite divisions? That's my question, because I
Ohio
don't think
State
there
and
is.
Illinois.
Is that as big of a rivalry though as?
No. It's just a trophy game. I'm just highlighting trophy games.
Trophy games. Yeah.
The Illabuck.
Illabuck. What?
It's one of my favorite trophies. It's like this little turtle. I don't understand why, but it's amazing. I love the Illabuck.
Is Maryland upset at that trophy?
I think they understand. They were late to the party. They've accepted it.
Well, you know what? You can start winning games and then you can complain.
Michigan, Minnesota play for the Jug.
Oh yeah, that's right. They do. Okay, so there are a couple. That, but like one of the more Big Ten rivalry games for like a trophy is the bucket.
It is. It's up there.
And I'm not saying it's the most, but it's one of the more recognizable.
Yep.
And they're in opposite divisions. So no, I think honestly, with Shooty talking about Minnesota, I want to say Minnesota, Ohio State.
Minnesota, Ohio State. Okay, that's who he had too. I really don't want to be the same as you guys. I definitely want to take Ohio State from that side. What I don't know is who in the West to have.
You can take Michigan if you want.
I'm okay. Thank you very much. I don't know who in the West to have confidence in. I mean, we still haven't seen Graham Mertz really put it together for Wisconsin. We still haven't seen Spencer Petras put it necessarily together for Iowa. I just think I do like the idea of the underdog story of Minnesota, but I guess I'll go Wisconsin just because. I mean, they've kind of earned it over time.
Honestly, you couldn't go wrong with that. I don't damn that one either, because traditionally they have been there. I mean, how boring is it that it's almost always, not always, but a good portion of the time, Ohio State and Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game?
No, it's true.
There's a reason for that though, so I don't at all say that that's a bad pick. I'm going a little off the grid,
which I like doing. I just don't want to agree with all of you guys.
So that's fine. We can go at odds.
So I pulled up here in a separate tab I'm looking at. I have all the Big Ten trophy games before we get to the second quarter.
Yeah.
Always
the first quarter that runs over.
Yes, it is. It's always heavy. We give 120% in the first quarter, and the rest
after that we just kind of cash it in and say bye.
Okay, so I'll run through the trophy games and we'll highlight which ones are the opposite division, but it might be fun just to highlight them all. So here we go. Illinois Northwestern play for the Land of Lincoln Trophy, so that couldn't happen in a Big Ten title game. Right. Illinois Ohio State, the Illabuck, we talked about that could be a thing. Illinois Purdue play for the Purdue Cannon.
Yep.
That can't happen. Indiana Michigan State, the Old Brass Spittoon, that couldn't happen.
You guys play IU for a spit bucket.
Isn't that awesome? I love trophies so much. It's so good.
Right.
Indiana Purdue play for the Old Oaken Bucket. That could happen.
2023, buddy.
Iowa, Minnesota, Floyd of Rosedale. Couldn't happen.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Iowa, Minnesota play for the Floyd of Rosedale.
Okay. Is that the pig one?
I think so. Yes. Okay. I think.
The hog or whatever.
Yeah. Iowa, Nebraska play for the Heroes Trophy. That couldn't happen.
Did that just start up?
No,
or
that one didn't.
Back in the day when Nebraska wasn't in.
Yeah, it looks like it started in 1891, according to Wikipedia. A couple days ago. Yeah, just a few. Iowa, Wisconsin play for the Heartland Trophy. So that one couldn't happen. Michigan State, Penn State, the Land Grant Trophy. That couldn't happen. Michigan State,
you could
Michigan.
throw Purdue into that one too, because they're a land grant.
Oh yeah. Michigan State play for Paul Bunyan. He's sitting up there. I'll tip my camera, hoping you can see.
Yep. There you go.
Michigan, Minnesota, Little Brown Jug. That one could happen.
Yeah.
Michigan, Northwestern play for the George Jewett Trophy. That could happen.
Uh-huh.
And that's new. This is just going to be the second year of it. Minnesota, Nebraska play for the $5 Bits of Broken Chair Trophy. That couldn't happen. I believe that was started. I know that got a good chuckle out of you. I believe that was started by Faux Polini on Twitter. Like there was a back and forth on social media, and they created a $5 Bits of Broken Chair Trophy, which is just amazing.
And it's an official game.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's awesome. This is why Big Ten football is amazing, folks. This right here is it.
How many other conferences go through this many type of do they have? Are there trophy games in other conferences? I really don't know because I don't. Well, I guess LSU and Arkansas play for the Golden Boot.
Yes. Yeah.
So there are trophy games, and are they as silly though? And they got the Egg Bowl.
Yeah.
Mississippi State. And
I definitely know there's some that are pretty ridiculous too, but it just feels like there's more in the Big Ten.
Yeah, because like every team's got 4 of them, with other teams in the conference. That was their way of being champions, I guess.
Minnesota, Penn State play for the Governor's Victory Bell, so that could happen.
Yeah.
Minnesota, Wisconsin, Paul Bunyan's Axe, and to close it out, Nebraska, Wisconsin for the Freedom Trophy. So all in all, you have the possibility of 1, counting them back, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You could have 5 trophy game possible in the Big Ten championship game.
I think they play for it. If they play in the championship, it's a second game for that trophy that year.
Have to.
All
right, let's go ahead and move to the second quarter since we're so far.
Yes, if you can't just do the whole show in the first quarter, can we?
All right. So here in the second quarter, we wanted to talk about a couple of different things going on with NIL.
Goodness, here we go. You're getting me fired up again early in the morning.
It's true. Name, image, likeness is continuing to capture headlines, and it will continue to for some time. But Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated recently wrote a report about this because you're seeing a lot of different commissioners. The SEC commissioner, Greg Sankey, the Pac-12 commissioner, George Kliavkov, recently started to urge, thank you, legislators to try and form some kind of structure with name, image, and likeness across all the different states. And now what you're seeing is this report from Ross Dellinger, as Sam is very already frustrated by this whole process. The NCAA, as he writes here, has been unable to enforce bylaws, fearing antitrust suits, while badly understaffed, down 15 to 20 staffers. But leaders are strongly urging them to enforce new NIL guidelines or else. Now, keep in mind, this is really what we've been talking about for weeks here on Big Ten Plus 4, is that the NCAA has simply been paralyzed by the fact of how scared they are to be sued again, because they've had multiple lawsuits against them because they're an easy and big target to take to court. So this is a part of that product, you could say, is the paralysis that they've seen. But nonetheless, we're seeing now the NCAA is trying to create a structure, which we've clamored for a long time, but they're trying to put this in place as we already have boosters making deals for student athletes to go to schools. So they're trying to put in a structure that would be retroactive. So now you're actually trying to take the toothpaste and put it back in the tube. Or, as Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith was quoted saying, we took the cops off the road, everybody started driving 90 miles an hour, and now we're trying to put the cops back on the road.
You've opened Pandora's box, and now you're trying to shove it back in.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't happen that way. And why? I will say it until I'm blue as my sweatshirt. Why does the NCAA, screw this, why does the NCAA think that it is Congress's job to handle what they can and can't do? No, this is your job. What are you doing? Are you just a logo? Is that all it is? You just want to be a logo and that's it? And yeah, we're the NCAA, woo, and that's it? Not do anything? Come on. Do something about this before it happens, for crying out loud. Don't let somebody pound the toothpaste tube and let it all out and then try to shove it back in. Don't do that. Goodness gracious. Do your job. Earn the money that you get paid exorbitant amounts of to do something, and then go, oh, I can't do it. They won't let me. Here's the thing. If you're going to punish kids for getting benefits that are too great for or that are because they're athletes, you don't mind putting rules in place that screw over athletes. You don't mind. So don't give me this, well, we've got to make sure we don't violate any antitrust laws or what. No, just do it. Because then you can worry about it later.
And see, that's what's interesting.
It's better as a teacher, as it's better to be too harsh and then loosen the straps than to let it wide open and then try to rein it back in. It's impossible.
You just saw an example of that with the NFL, where the player was caught betting games, and they instantly booted him for, what was it, a year or two? That you got booted for?
Suspension.
Like, that's a rather hefty and severe punishment, but really it's to be the precedent, is what that punishment is trying to serve. That, look, this is what we will do. We are not tolerating this. So you're
I've
absolutely
got my
right.
own thoughts on that though, Dalton, too.
Okay, well, do you want to offer those up real quick?
Sure, because I think while Calvin Ridley should be punished because he bet on a sport that he plays in. Doesn't matter if you're inactive or not. There's one thing that you should not do, and that's bet on the sport in which you play. For your team, against your team, for teams not even related to your game. Doesn't matter. It's your sport. But at the same time, the NFL has kind of enabled it by making, sponsorship deals with these companies and then putting betting windows in their facilities.
Yep.
Now, come on. That's like putting an alcoholic as a bartender and saying, don't drink.
Yep.
But serve all these drinks to everybody.
It's very much the tightrope of today's day and age that everybody's going to start walking, because, I mean, gambling is here in sports.
Oh, for sure.
And the money is simply unavoidable. Like, you cannot ignore it if you're a pro league. Matter of fact, even if you're college athletics to a certain degree, like, even though you conflict with the moralities of, at sometimes, boys and girls, like, some of them aren't even like really 18 yet, right? Like, or they're right there on the border of becoming men and women. Like, you kind of deal with the ethos or the ethics of all that stuff. Nonetheless, like, sports gaming is here to stay because the money, the wallet is just too big. And especially where you're seeing more and more people grab some dollars with student athletes, agents running amok with all the NIL deals, and some may actually take away from schools. And here's the big thing. Here's where schools will gripe a little bit with you, because this is where everybody gets confused. So I do want people to hear me on this. Everybody thinks that because the student athletes are getting some of the dollars and maybe the schools won't get as much, that everybody's saying, oh, schools are just mad because they're losing out some money. Well, part of it, though, is that money went to the other sports on campus to fund those. It's not just because an administrator is going home with a few less dollars. It's because they might have to close down a program on campus because it's not able to be funded anymore. So that's a big part of this when you're looking from a school's perspective, why they're so upset about this. But my point simply is, as you kind of add in sports gaming and some different things, that can fill the hole for a lot of these different institutions across the country that might be able to help alleviate or solve some of those problems with the underfunding, with student athletes getting some money. So, and I also do want to bring this up too, Sam, because I think a lot of people get confused. And much like with everything today, we become very absolutist in every conversation, right? Like, pay the players. No, don't pay the players. And everything.
Pay the players, but offer nothing other than that.
You're right. Like, and we don't leave any room for nuance in the middle of these two very polar sides. So let me just say that a lot of the coaches' problems, and you saw this from, Brad Underwood from Illinois a week ago, talking about all the chaos with NIL, transfer portals, and everything else. He said it's miserable. He hasn't talked to a coach that he knows that's having a good time, yada, yada, yada. And everybody was like, oh, sour grapes. You're mad because some young guys are making money. No, it's not that. The problem is there's no structure. There's no rules. Nobody knows what's allowed in terms of funneling as a third party for these deals. We don't know what's cheating, what's not cheating. We don't know what are the rules to create rosters. Like, nobody knows what's going on. That's the problem and the frustration for many of these coaches, much more so than just student athletes getting a paycheck. And people need to register that perspective, because it's hard to really make a step forward if we don't consider that.
How crazy it is. This is my example. This is how insanely crazy NIL is right now. Jim Larinaga did absolutely nothing in Miami to make, I don't even know the kid's name, honestly. I can't even think
Nigel
of his
Pack.
name. There we go. He demanded a renegotiation of his NIL deal, or he was going to the transfer portal. There was nothing said that Jim Larinaga did wrong. It wasn't that he was unhappy with the program. It was he was unhappy with the money he was making. So I'm leaving if you don't give me more money.
Excuse me, just for clarification for the listeners, Nigel Pack is the kid who came in transferring from Kansas State.
Right.
Wong, I believe, is the player you're talking about.
There we go. Yes. He just up and left, or was going to leave. And that company ponied it up to keep him there. It had nothing to do with the program in which he was, as far as we know, he was perfectly fine and happy with how the program was, but he was unhappy with how much money he was making. He felt he needed more. We're making it too easy for these kids to leave. I mean, honestly, if their feelings are hurt, if they're not making enough money, it doesn't matter. If it's a Tuesday, it doesn't matter. They can say they're leaving. And here's the thing. I'm all for the fact that, that coaches can leave on a whim, or, but they're not doing it every year and just because they're unhappy. They're staying for a season unless they get fired in mid-season, whatever. Come on. You're mandating more money when it's not supposed to be about the money.
And to your point, players can up and leave and transfer. And right now, we don't really have a structure or a window that tells players when they need to transfer by with eligibility. I mean, there's so much cloud and murky waters. That's why it was recently proposed, I believe, by the AFCA, the American Football Coaches Association, to have 2 transfer windows. This calendar of the month, or this calendar of the year, like this few month window, you can transfer, not a problem. Another one of those windows that exists too, where you can transfer, you can play next year wherever you go. So for like, it's your choice. But the point is the rosters are next to impossible to manage right now with the 0 rules in place.
And there's a player can leave in the middle of the season and go somewhere in the middle of the season and be eligible to play in the middle of the season.
Right. And a lot of people, there's a crowd, like when we say that, like there needs to be rules in terms of when you transfer, how we kind of manage the structure. There's a crowd of people that would say, well, you can't tell somebody when they're able to go to a school, or if they want to go to a school. I hear you. I hear that you don't want to put the handcuffs on, but please understand that, like, in professional sports, there are rules for things like this. Like, you have to have a structure in place to create a competitive environment in athletics. Like, we can't keep doing this and have a competitive environment for college athletics.
We're teaching these kids to be adults and how to act as adults. We need to give them some structure of, look, you can't just do it whenever. And, there are obligations that you enter into. Let's say, and here's a lot of people don't realize that when a basketball player, or actually a college athlete, receives a 4-year full ride scholarship, they're actually getting 4 one-year scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can be denied their scholarship after each season. No questions, no reasons. The coach can just decide, you know what, you're losing your scholarship.
Yep.
It doesn't happen that often, or it's not publicized that it happens that often, but that can happen. And so 1 year at a time, I don't care. That's fine. If you want to leave, here's the problem that I see, or what I see when I hear a kid's, oh, he's in his third school in 4 years. That means he's non-committal.
Mm-hmm.
He runs at the first sign of trouble, or whatever. And there may be one transfer of necessity out of those three, but the other two just mean you're non-committal. So as a pro team, I don't want you I mean, first off, if you're sticking around for 4 years, you're not the number one draft pick,
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those that, if you're indecisive that much for 4 years at college, I don't know that I want you on my team.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't understand that.
No, and that's
we
not
got to
really
teach them something.
Well, that used to be my question is too, especially as rapidly evolving as this thing goes, and we already have the cart in front of the horse, right? Like we have not thought through a lot of the things that we've just kind of rubber stamped through. Move 4 or 5 decades from now, is education still tied to this? Like, I mean, we're talking about college athletics. Is education still tied to this a half century from now? Like, where do we go?
Dalton, I don't think in 10 years it is, let alone 50.
I mean, it's you if you want to just start a la carte and everything from the student athlete experience, there's quite a few student athletes that just want to be athletes. And I don't really know how the landscape changes to that, because I don't know how you could play at Purdue University and not go to the university. Like, I'm not really sure how that works, but I could maybe see a future where that's maybe a possibility.
Oh yeah, and anybody that goes to school to play sport and wants to play a sport, it's all intramural.
Mm-hmm.
You're not being high unless and they have walk-ons, that get paid, or whatever, those walk-ons that would normally be, invited to, pay for their school but still be on the team. They get invited to be on the team and get, a stipend or something. I'm sure there would be the exception, or they'll be doing stories on those students that are actually in school and playing.
Right. That's going to be the rare person.
Whoa. Yeah.
Last thing I'll bring up before we hit the halftime break, because we were talking a little bit about the boosters that are starting to funnel a lot of these deals together and put a lot together in today's day of NIL and really what is pay for play. It's interesting. I had conversations before with the AFCA, the American Football Coaches Association, and the director. And one of the things that was brought up, he had said that many coaches were reporting to him saying that, look, I have down here a player that I don't want on my team that a booster is trying to make a deal with. A booster is trying to give this high school student money to come to my school, and I don't want him there. We have boosters that, because they're not rich enough to own an NFL team, an NBA team, or own their own professional team,
they're turning the college into it.
They got enough money that they're going to make college sports their own little fantasy land where they're owning the team. Like, that's a real problem today with college athletics.
Well, and coaches don't have the pull with those or against those boosters because the boosters got the cash. Yep. The coaches can't say, well, I just won't play them. I'm not offering them a scholarship. They'll have to pay their own way. They don't care. They'll pay for it.
And the coach isn't allowed to have communication with the booster. Like, that's one of the things we know. You're not supposed to be having that.
Why? What's the point? What's the point now, Dalton?
You're right.
Goodness gracious. Who cares? Who cares? Because you're making it wide open to where these players can make money, get paid by these boosters. Why in the hell can a coach not talk to a booster and tell him to knock it off? Why?
Not wrong. I don't have any kind of retort. I think that maybe
the kick in the butt is the NCAA would punish a coach for doing that, but yet let the player talk to the same booster for $400,000. It's ridiculous.
Well, I made the crack recently. You have all this pay for play going on that's very transparent and very exposed. And meanwhile, in Nebraska, a special teams analyst coach got fined for a violation that he did throughout the season with practices and different things.
How two-faced is this? I mean, seriously.
Yep.
don't talk. You're a coach. You can't talk to anybody. But players, hey, you know what? Hold your team at hostage. If they don't pony it up, leave.
How do you
You're
feel,
fine.
Sam?
Oh, yeah, I told you were going to fire me up, man. I told you. I hate this.
Well, with that, let's go to halftime.
They made their own bed, and now they're pissed that they've got to lie in it. All right, halftime. You are listening to Big 10 Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hi, I'm Tina Jaramillo.
And I'm Hillary Doherty.
And we host the Muck Podcast, where we discuss the dark and sometimes weird true stories in American politics.
Hey, Tina, did you know that Elvis crashed the Nixon White House for the sole purpose of getting a DEA badge? And it worked?
What? Or how a gun control advocate senator out of California engaged in gun trafficking with notorious gang leader Shrimp Boy.
Shrimp Boy, I remember him. Okay, so, we cover all of that and more for maladies, madness, mischief, and murder in U.S. politics.
And we also host a bi-weekly interview segment called Lil Muck.
We interview politicians, journalists, activists, and others who share their experiences in politics.
Find the Muck Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and check us out on social media at the Muck Podcast.
Hey, I'm Pantsless Aaron.
This is Stevie.
And I'm Augie.
And we are BFYTW, a podcast all about playing games and having fun. Our games are usually based on British panel shows and game shows, but we'll play anything that captures our attention and imagination. Why? It's right there in the title.
You'll never guess what the F stands for.
Third quarter,
I hit
second
the button
half.
twice and it didn't whistle.
I could see the frustration just
Oh
swept
my
across
gosh.
your face.
You got me fired up the last segment, and then I click that and I'm like, just work.
Sam is just a bull in a trailer behind the truck, just like banging against the walls right now as we move forward. Well, hey, I think I got something that might make you a little bit more excited. Might
Soothing.
give you a little bit more hope in things. In college basketball, there's this idea, and I wanted to talk about this, college basketball flex scheduling. It was reported by Matt Norlander of CBS. He pulled this together. There's this idea, this concept, where many of the non-Power 6 schools in conferences, so keep that in mind. We're not talking Big 10, Big 12, SEC, ACC, Pac-12, Big East here. We're talking all the other conferences that you get towards the end of the regular season, you get into February, and you leave 2 games open in your schedule, and those 2 games will be determined late in the year. And the idea is it gives you more opportunities for your resume heading into March Madness, because we know for a lot of these schools, they don't get as many high-quality opponent matchups. So, and you would be linked with the opponent based on how you're playing. So it'll be basically, there's a formula that puts it into tiers. Of course
there is.
Always is a formula. There's this formula, this algorithm that puts it into tiers and would 100% wipe out human decision making in this process.
Yeah, that worked with the BCS, didn't it?
Yeah, right. Well, so you'd have 2 games, and one would be home, one would be away. So Gonzaga is playing really well. They're going to go against Houston in 1 game.
Think about that. One of the teams that has been in the top 5 for like the last 3 years is going to have the capability to boost their resume more.
Well, and that helps their seeding. I mean,
Sure.
if they're struggling a little bit more than years past.
Number 1 overall, let's get higher than that.
Right. Well, alternatively for Houston, they win that game. Think about what happens for Houston.
Sure.
Or think about like last year, Loyola Chicago. I mean, they were right there on that bubble trying to get in. You win a couple of those games, because the 2 games you'd play, 1 at home, 1 on the road.
Against the same team?
No. Okay. Different opponents.
Varying opponents. Okay, so it gives you the opportunity to win a couple of games against some like-minded opponents, 1 on home court, 1 on the road. Okay.
So we've been thinking about this too with all these conferences, teams, how awesome this is for opportunities, right? For your resume, for March Madness to really boost yourself up. Now think about it as you, the fan, Sam. Late February, you turn on the TV and you're seeing essentially pre-postseason games in some effect, in some essence, on your TV, besides all the crazy rivalries that you have on from the Power Six at that time. I mean, how great is this as a basketball fan to tune in one weekend and just have nonstop, big-time March Madness implication games thrown through your TV at you?
Now, do they call it like the Bracket Buster weekend or something like that?
Well, that was kind of the original idea, that concept that happened 10 years ago or so. Yeah. That's kind of, this is the next evolution of it, is pretty much kind of what we're looking at. But yeah, no, like I think about that. How great would that be?
It would certainly make for 2 weekends or 2 dates of really interesting basketball, because those teams are playing they're not guaranteed an at-large bid. So they've either got to win their conference tournament or hope that they've got enough resume built to get the at-large. So that it's brilliant in the theory that this could work for those small teams like a Murray State, where if they're, they just don't have it, the resume coming up to it. And if they don't win the tournament, they're not in. It could definitely boost somebody like that. It's not that way every year. I mean, they were a 7 seed this year, so I mean, they were comfortably in. But those years, we're not talking about the big conferences, but some of those 16 seeds, they might be 15 seeds because they get a couple of wins against some teams that are not horrible, So yeah, I really like the idea. It's a matter of whether or not they can logistically do it.
Right. But how about this, though? I mean, we're talking about, and we just spent 20 minutes rambling and ranting about the NCAA and how poor leadership is, how vacant leadership is in some areas. But and then here in this respect, I mean, it's also not the NCAA, so we can't give them credit. But people in college athletics,
anyways, Dalton.
I know better, Sam. But people in college athletics with some true creativity show now an idea that would help the schools, it would help fans, it would help everybody involved. I thought this was such an awesome idea. I have no idea when it could come into place. It still needs voted through by all the different conferences, but it sounds like 22 of the 32 are on.
Here's my question. Why include the top 6?
Well, think about it. For, let's say, Purdue, you're in the middle of a Big Ten championship race.
But you said they weren't going to be included.
Yes, they're not included.
So why does it matter if the top 6 conferences have a vote, won it or done or not? They don't care.
It's more about getting the other conferences on board, I believe.
Okay, I was going to say, there should only be, there's 33 conferences. There should only be 27
I think 32.
Votes. Okay, so 26 votes, that's it. The top 6 don't get a vote because they're not included in it.
And I think 22 of those conferences are on board. So, like, they're
good.
Really close to kind of having a consensus here. I don't know. I'm not sure if they got that many details out. Again, Matt Norlander from CBS has the report if you want to check out more info. But I have no idea when it could come through, but I would love to see that as a college basketball fan. You know how exciting our Big 10 plus 4 episode would be that time?
Oh, goodness. Hey, this week we have Bracket Buster Weekend. Woo! I would love it.
Yeah, it'll be great. So that's something to keep an eye on as we move forward.
Although technically, wouldn't they be out of the plus 4? So
plus 4 and more.
Oh. Ooh, that for those weeks it'd be the Big 10 plus 4 and more.
We got our first spin-off podcast. How about that? Let's go ahead, Sam. If you got nothing else here on this, we'll move to the fourth quarter.
Wow, pushing me out the door. I see what.
Yep. We went so heavy in the first half. And,
we gotta stop doing that, right?
Yeah. We could try anyway. All right. So this is, of course, the fourth quarter. This is where we bring you our headline, something that stuck out to us throughout the past week. And as always, we start off with Sam Sprunger and the Sam Sentinel.
Hey, that's me. All right. This one is not going to be as heavy as it was last week, I promise. Because we're just going to talk about the NFL draft. I'm kind of mentioned earlier that I'm really strongly considering if I don't, but I'm strongly considering buying a Browns jersey for the first time because, as you mentioned, you're not huge into NFL.
Yep.
Now you kind of go after those players of interest. And I talked about the David Bell, the fact that I won't buy a Packers jersey, though. I can guarantee that. David Bell's going to the Browns. I'm excited to see him play because I think he's going to be just absolutely fantastic. Another one that I don't know that I'm considering a jersey, but I will watch to see how Tyler Linderbaum does with Baltimore. I'm getting older, as a young buck, I was very anti, I hate David Bell now. He plays for the Browns. I don't care about that as much anymore because I see their value. This kind of goes in hand a little bit with the fact that I still wanted David Bell to stay at Purdue. I would have liked to see Tyler Linderbaum, if he had another year of eligibility, I don't know if he did or not, to stay at Iowa because college fans want us to see those stars stay. But it does allow me some joy on Sundays if I'm not paying attention to the Bears or the Bears are a dumpster fire, which could happen. I can't wait to see some of these Big Ten play. I'm actually even excited to see Aiden Hutchinson play in Detroit because he is he's a great kid and he's a great talent, and I think he's going to do great things in Detroit. So it's not a matter of I'm an NFL fan necessarily, but I'm kind of like where you're at now. I don't even know if you've got a rooting team. I think you mentioned some time ago that you might have been a Cowboys fan. I don't know.
It's true.
Oh, where we went wrong with you, pal.
Which, by the way, I know this is your headline, and I'll get out of the way, but that was that decision for the Cowboys was based on my favorite college teams who had the most alums in the NFL at the time when I was picking my NFL team. So, that's how I came up with the Cowboys. They had the most of my favorite college teams players on the roster when I was picking the team. So, it's all based on college.
That's how it happened, huh?
Yeah, it is.
But my point is I'm a Bears fan. I've got some Bears clothes and stuff, some shirts and whatnot, but I'm not a through and through Bears fan in the aspect of I live or die on whether or not they win or lose. I'm too old to worry about that anymore and let an outcome of a game decide whether or not I'm happy or sad. So I'm kind of graduated to the old age, I guess, because I'm rooting for players now. I have a team, but I'm not as married to that as I was when I was younger. And I'm just really excited, especially the two that I mentioned, Linderbaum and Bell, but George Karlaftis as well. And yeah, those are two of the three that I mentioned are Purdue players, but they're players that I have followed. And so I want to see how they do as pros. So I'm excited. I'm sad to see them leave Purdue and Iowa with Linderbaum, but at the same point, I get to watch them and see how they progress. And the first player I can remember doing that was Orlando Pace, and that was a while ago. Yeah. But he was at Ohio State, and he was an amazing lineman. And that made me even more excited when he signed with the Bears later in his career. But at the same time, the first time I ever heard the term pancake block, and Orlando Pace is the reason for it. So I guess I could see this coming down the pike a while ago, but I'm excited for this next NFL season just for the fact that I'll have at least a rooting interest in some players. So,
wow.
Sam Sentinel.
What I heard there is the Chicago Bears has broken Sam Sprunger as a man and taken away his rooting interest for a team that he's now
They've
just
broken
switched
me.
Individuals. That's how I've perceived what you've thrown out there. No, I'm kidding. But
They've
nonetheless,
broken me.
Geez, between the Cubs, the Bears, man,
hey, you know what?
You're seasoned.
Yeah, I'm weathered. I like to use the word weathered. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. All right. So for the Dalton Daily, I wanted to head over to the softball diamond in the Big Ten. You see, obviously, here I'm wearing the Michigan State hat. If you're joining us on video, you see the Paul Bunyan Trophy, all the Michigan State memorabilia.
If you're watching, you're seeing the big glare on my head too.
Yeah, that's also fair.
Freshly shaved. Anyways, go ahead.
But we don't give a ton of credit, or we don't like to give a ton of credit to that school down the road that we've talked about, Michigan, there in Ann Arbor. But on the softball diamond, Michigan head coach Carol Hutchins just recorded this past week. Career win 1,700. She's the winningest coach in college softball history. She has 1,700 career wins there in Ann Arbor. She's in her 38th season there in Ann Arbor. I thought that was such an amazing feat that I wanted to salute that. And also, I mean, come on, Sam, you know I'm always going to find the angles. She did graduate from Michigan State, if some people don't know her background.
Wow.
That's right. She was a shortstop on the AIAW National Championship team back in 1976 for Michigan State. So she played in the green and white. She actually was just inducted into the Michigan State Athletics Hall of Fame this past go-round. She's been the head coach for a long, long time. She's the most tenured in the Big Ten in the softball history. And, of course, she has the most wins in all of NCAA softball history with 1,700, as we just mentioned. I thought that was really great. She's a great ambassador for the sport. As much as it might pain to say that she leads the Maize and Blue, and she's a great ambassador for the University of Michigan. Wishing her all the best, because that's such a great feat. And, of course, the Wolverines and the rest of the softball teams are getting ready for the Big Ten softball tournament. That takes place next weekend. So we'll kind of update you on that as we move forward throughout there. But it'll be up in East Lansing, and some of the best teams, including Michigan and Carol Hutchins, will be there for that one. So nice work by Carol Hutchins, somebody who's just been a long staple of Big Ten softball, college softball, and women's sports. So great job by Carol Hutchins. And a Spartan grad.
I'm so torn on that, because I would never take a job at IU. But I'm not a graduate. Honestly, it's time for a little bit of admitting something that I'm not proud of.
Confession time. This is a new segment.
Yes. I have my undergrad from, at the time, it was Indiana Purdue of Fort Wayne, IPFW. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the way that works is there are programs that are IU programs, and there are programs that are Purdue programs.
Oh, no.
I graduated with a degree from Indiana University, and I feel dirty about it. I do. I
don't even know who you are.
Well,
everything's been a lie.
I told my uncle, who is a diehard IU fan, and he says, "Oh, God loves you." And I said, "No, I think he's punishing me for something." Because I have to. I just say I graduated from IPFW is what I do. Now it's Purdue Fort Wayne, so I just say I graduated from Purdue Fort Wayne, even though the degree says Indiana University.
Wow, the universe really rounded that out for you, huh? That it's now just Purdue Fort Wayne.
Yeah, so I'm guessing I could probably pay for a new degree, and it would just say Purdue Fort Wayne.
That would probably be worth it to you,
but
if you could.
I don't know if it will, because technically it is an IU degree. It pains me to say it.
How do you look in the mirror?
I don't look in the mirror. Like I look when I do catch a glimpse of myself, I'm like, oh, I look at myself in disgust every time. It's
can never
IU grad.
Can never get away from it.
No, you can't wash it off. You can't.
Oh, shoot,
but
that's
my whole point is on that one is I get, as a professional, going to your rival school, but as a fan, I'm just like, it does not compute. It just doesn't.
Yeah,
because I went from Eastside, the school that we both graduated from, and I worked and loved working at Garrett, which is the rival school to Eastside, and I hated myself for a good solid 2 months before I realized, you know what, it's just laundry. You
It's
know,
just laundry. No, I get it. It's one of the great things about college sports, though. As we're
yes.
seeing so many things we love in college sports, one of the great things is the rivalries and the true passion and
Well,
how
wasn't
much
it
it means to
Carolyn
us.
Versip? Didn't she coach at IU and then leave to go to Purdue?
Yes. I do remember that.
I thought it was, and that just was like and I think she's a Purdue grad. I think so. Like it didn't register as to why she would have been at IU anyways, but it just was really weird because she like it wasn't like she was let go from IU. She just up
Right.
and left and went to Purdue.
It's
Yeah.
all so wonky. We should do a story where we uncover or show where we uncover all of those rivalry moves between schools and coaches.
Like the biggest one is Bo Schembechler. That's the biggest one. I can't.
Yep.
You can't even argue that.
That's your trump card.
Yeah. Boom, done. Which, in my opinion, probably made the rivalry even worse than what it was. You know, it was a border war anyway, but then he left Ohio State to go to Michigan, and it just got bad after that.
But as we said, that's for another show. As we close out,
we're hitting summer, so it may be a soon show.
Correct. You're not wrong. But Sam, on the way out the door, where can everybody find us?
Yes, sir. If you look at the top of the screen, if you're watching, we have our ways of finding us on social media and on the interweb. We go to Twitter. It's at Big 10 Plus 4. Spell out the plus. Don't put the symbol. Spell it out. No symbol. Facebook, you put the symbol. Don't spell it out. Okay. So the one with character limits, we spell it out. The one without, we do the symbol. But no, Facebook is a Big 10 Plus 4, no spelling it out. And then you can find us at oddpodsmedia.com. You can also find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts, and you can see us weekly on ASAP Network. So we're all over the place, and you can't get rid of us. We're like this cold I've got.
Just like this IU degree that holds over Sam's head. You can't shake us loose either.
It's disturbing. It's on my wall because it is a degree. I mean, I graduated from a college, and it's up there with my master's degree. But I put the master's degree in first. Like it's left to right, and it's master's degree then that other one. I almost thought about lowering the Indiana one just because I consider it lesser of a degree, but
it's the ugly stepchild is the analogy.
Yeah, it's disturbing. Anyways, but yeah, find us. You can also follow us individually. We've got our Twitter handles right there that you can find us.
Perfect.
I'm gonna sign off for the day and just kind of cry. I think you made me confess some things that are just they're very painful. I don't talk about them much.
It's the only appropriate reaction is to just crawl in a ball and cry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
while Sam goes off the mic and hides in the corner, we'll say goodbye. Thank you all for joining us this week. And for Sam Sprunger, I'm Dalton Shetler, and on behalf of Big 10 Plus 4, we'll talk to you next week.
See ya.